You can tell when a story isn't meant for daylight, not because someone says classified or off the record, but because the room changes before the words even start. People shift in their seats, voices drop, and somewhere in the back of your head a voice whispers, "You shouldn't be here for this." What I'm about to tell you didn't make the reports, not because it wasn't important, but because it lived in that thin layer between what's legal to know and what's necessary to hide. It's a story about the kind of people you pass on the street and never notice, until the moment you realize they are the only reason you're still breathing. And it starts with something so small, so ordinary, you'd swear it couldn't matter, until it did. Here's how it happened: Frankfurt. Autumn 1998. The sky hangs heavy with gray clouds, the kind that swallow the sun whole. The air is cold, 10 degrees maybe, enough to make you zip your jacket, but not enough to numb your hands. The terminal is alive, a river of people flowing toward the security gates. The smell of fresh coffee, warm bread, and somewhere in the mix, a sharp note of expensive European perfume. Then there's him, a man you might pass without a second glance. Khaki jacket, faded jeans, sneakers worn down at the heel, a green rucksack slung over one shoulder, dust clinging to the fabric like old memories. But if you looked closer, you'd see it: the straight back, the steady pace. The way his eyes scan cameras, exits people's hands. Not a tourist, not today. German security, a tall officer with a thick mustache and the kind of stare that doesn't blink. He gestures. "Open the bag." The American unzips it: a few shirts, a rolled pair of socks, a paperback cover worn soft. Nothing special until the officer taps the bottom. The sound is wrong, solid, heavy, metal. The officer reaches in, and there it is, a double false bottom. Beneath it, a sealed metal tube, 40 centimeters long, smooth, featureless except for a few faint scratches. The officer's hand moves toward the cap. "Trust me, you don't want to know what's in there." It's not a threat, it's not a plea, it's something else. Like seeing the tip of an iceberg and knowing the rest is buried in deep, dark water. Two more officers appear. They speak in German, low and quick. The American doesn't move, doesn't explain. Silence is his armor. Minutes stretch. And then a new figure arrives, German officer. Behind him, a man in a dark blue suit, an American diplomatic pin on his lapel. A few quiet words in German. A nod. Ist frei. Lassen Sie ihn gehen. He's free, let him go. The tube slides back into the false bottom. The zipper closes. The airman walks past, eyes meeting mine for just one breath. No malice, no warmth. Just a quiet reminder. Some jobs mean carrying the weight of the world on your back and never letting anyone look inside. Hours later, at 30,000 feet, his words still echoed in my head. "You don't want to know." Because in some lines of work, silence doesn't just protect secrets, it protects lives. Frankfurt was just one moment. One of countless times a soldier chooses between telling the truth and protecting something far bigger than themselves. But sometimes, silence isn't easy. Sometimes it means swallowing every insult, every misunderstanding, just to keep a promise you can't even explain. And that's exactly what happened in the next story. Frankfurt Airport, 1998. The kind of cold that seeps into your sleeves and makes your breath visible. Travelers move in slow, heavy waves, families clutching passports, business travelers glued to their phones, soldiers on leave trying to look like civilians. And then there's him. Khaki jacket, faded jeans, sneakers so worn you could see the edges fray, a green rucksack slung over one shoulder, dust from another continent still clinging to it. If you didn't know better, you'd think he was just another backpacker. but his eyes give him away. They move with purpose, noticing exits, cameras, every hand that brushes too close to a bag, a man trained to read rooms like maps. A German security officer steps forward, tall, stiff posture, thick mustache like something carved from steel. He gestures. Öffnen Sie den Rucksack. Open the bag. The American obeys. Out come a few shirts, a rolled-up pair of socks, a paperback novel with a bent spine, nothing unusual. The sound is wrong, not fabric, not plastic, metal. The officer's eyes narrow. His hand moves to peel back the base of the rucksack. There, a double false bottom. Beneath it, a smooth metal cylinder sealed tight. The officer reaches for the cap. Trust me, you don't want to know what's in there. It's not the kind of line you say with a smirk. It's not bravado. It's pure certainty. Like someone telling you not to open a door because they already know what's on the other side, and it's not meant for you. The tension is thick enough to taste. The airman doesn't move, doesn't explain. Silence is his shield. Minutes pass. A third figure arrives, an American in a dark suit, diplomatic pin on his lapel, quiet words in German, a nod from the officer. Ist frei, lassen Sie ihn gehen. He's free. Let him go. The cylinder disappears back into the bag. Zipper closes. The airman slings the rucksack over his shoulder, walks past without looking back, except for one brief glance in my direction. No malice, no warmth, just a quiet understanding some burdens aren't meant to be shared. Hours later, his words still echoed, "You don't want to know." Because in his world, silence doesn't just protect secrets, it protects lives. In intelligence and special operations, silence isn't just the absence of speech. It's a calculated weapon. Every answer, every pause, every vague shrug, all of it is deliberate. People like Mara, trained operatives, know one truth: information is ammunition. The more you give away, the less control you have. Psychologists call it the power of ambiguity. It forces the other side to fill in the blanks themselves, and people are terrible at guessing the truth. They overshoot, they second-guess, they hesitate. And in the field, hesitation can mean survival. Think of poker. You're holding a strong hand, but you don't smile, you don't fidget. You let the other player burn themselves out trying to read you. In high-stakes security, the table is real life. The chips are human lives. There's another layer: tone control. If you sound defensive, you've already given ground. If you sound too confident, they'll dig harder. But a calm, even voice, that's an invitation for them to question themselves, not you. In Frankfurt, that airman played it perfectly. Not a word more than necessary. Not a gesture that could be mistaken for aggression. And in the end, the clock ran out for the security team before it did for him. Sometimes saying nothing is not about fear of speaking. It's about knowing that the silence itself is the answer. Kisan, the kind of place where the air smells like metal and smoke and the ground shakes more than it stands still. It was 68. The siege had been going for weeks. Among the mud, the sandbags, and the constant rain of artillery was him. A small Marine, didn't talk much, didn't brag about kills, didn't show off gear. Just did his job, carrying ammo, patching wounds, keeping his head down. We all thought he was a quiet replacement, just another grunt. Until the night the perimeter almost broke. The radio was screaming, different units talking over each other, confusion everywhere. Then I hear his voice. Not the quiet, mumbled tone we were used to, but clear, commanding. He switches the radio to a frequency none of us had access to. Starts calling in air support with coordinates rattled off like second nature. Minutes later, the jungle lit up. F-4 Phantoms came in low, dropping ordnance so precise it felt like the earth was splitting just where we needed it. That night, the siege line held. We were alive because someone somewhere had answered his call. Only after did we learn he wasn't just a grunt. He'd been a strategic air strike coordinator, higher rank than our company commander. And for months he'd carried that secret without a hint. I asked him why. Rank doesn't matter. What matters is being where you're needed when you're needed. That was it. No speech, no story. Just a man who understood that sometimes the biggest title you can have is the one who showed up. In war, some people hide behind their rank. Others hide their rank to stand beside you in the mud. And that's the paradox of silence and secrets. Sometimes it's about what you don't say. Other times it's about who you don't let yourself be. Until the moment truly calls for it, the air inside the building shifted. Not in a way you could measure with a thermostat, but in that subtle, animal way your body notices before your brain catches up. The hum of conversation faded. The weight in the room pressed down harder. I saw it first in Ortiz's hands. A minute ago he'd been pawing through Mara's bag like a cop late for dinner, sharp, impatient, not gentle. Now, his grip softened, fingers deliberate, almost careful. Lane, the guy who'd been leaning back with a smug grin, suddenly wasn't smiling. His jaw tightened. His elbows came off the desk, and then there was the badge. It lay in the center of the metal table, catching the harsh fluorescent light in dull flashes. Small, unadorned, a falcon mid-dive. To anyone else, just a piece of steel. But the silence it created, that told you everything. It was the kind of silence you hear when people realize they've stumbled into something they were never supposed to see. I've been in rooms like that before. Rooms where the temperature drops without the air conditioning kicking on. Rooms where the oxygen feels thinner because the stakes just spiked. It took me back, Baghdad, 2005. Orders on paper said I was just a courier moving technical equipment from the green zone to an intel hub across town. In reality, I was handcuffed to a silver case with 4 mechanical locks and a biometric seal. It weighed heavy on my wrist, not from the metal, but from what I knew was inside. The streets were restless that day. Baghdad restless. Every checkpoint felt like rolling dice. One wrong face in the crowd and you don't make it home for dinner. We reached an Iraqi army security gate. A young soldier stepped forward, barely 20, uniform too big for his frame. His English was broken but clear enough. Open case. He thought he was doing his job. I knew he was about to step into a world he didn't understand. I looked him straight in the eyes. "If you open this," I said, calm as I could manage, "you and I are both coming off the roster today." He laughed, thought I was joking. Then his officer came running, eyes sharp, voice clipped. No questions, no inspection. Just one quick order in Arabic. "Gate open, move along." I didn't know if he recognized the case or recognized the kind of man who carries it. Didn't matter. We drove on. Sometimes survival isn't about what you say, it's about what you don't let happen. Back in that fluorescent-lit room, I saw the same look in Ortiz's eyes that I'd seen in that officer's. Sudden awareness. The silent acknowledgement of something above your clearance. Lane shifted uncomfortably, like a man realizing the ground he's standing on might not hold. It reminded me of Key San. Siege days are slow, heavy. You ration your food, your ammo, your breath. We were surrounded, cut off. Among us was Corporal Daniels, quiet, wiry, unremarkable. Just another Marine, or so we thought. One night, things went bad. Mortars walked closer, comms were shot to hell except for basic channels. Daniels pulled out a radio I'd never seen. Secure, sleek, the kind of gear you don't draw from supply. He keyed in a frequency I couldn't name, spoke a string of coordinates in a voice so steady you'd think he was ordering lunch. 15 minutes later, the horizon lit up. Precision airstrikes cleared us a corridor. That's when I learned Daniels wasn't just a grunt. He was a strategic air coordinator with the kind of clearance that could change the course of a battle. When I asked why he never mentioned it, he just shrugged. Rank doesn't matter when you're shoulder to shoulder. What matters is being where you're needed when the shooting starts. Mara, she had that same quiet weight. The heavy glass doors swung open. In walked a man in a dark suit, no tie, no badge. His authority didn't need props. The air shifted again, tighter this time. He didn't look at Ortiz. He didn't look at Lane. He went straight to Mara. "You're exactly where you're supposed to be," he said. No raised voice, no explanation. But in that moment, every protocol in the building flipped. Ortiz returned each of Mara's belongings like they were artifacts from a national archive. Lane swallowed hard, eyes down, like he'd brushed up against something dangerous without knowing it. The man in the suit didn't glance back as he turned to leave. Mara followed. And just like that, the tension bled out of the room, leaving only the echo of what we'd all just seen. Most people think federal security, military police, and intel officers have eyes everywhere. Truth is, there are shadows even they can't see. Units like Shadow Lark don't live on official rosters. They don't show up in training manuals. Even inside the system, they move unseen. That's the point. The best camouflage isn't a net or a paint job. It's anonymity. When you blend so well that the system built to protect you doesn't even know you exist, you can operate without interference. It's a shield and a sword in the same hand. Mara slipped the badge back into her bag. Ortiz looked like he just handled a live grenade. Lane couldn't meet anyone's eyes. Some people carry their rank on their shoulders. Others carry it in their silence. And that silence, that invisible shield, was about to matter more than any of them realized. Some people earn their authority through rank, medals, and years in the field. Others, they carry it in a way you can't measure, quiet, invisible, until the exact second it needs to show. What happened in that room was more than a security incident. It was a ripple, one that started in silence but would reach further than anyone standing there could imagine. And if you think you've seen the last of Mara, Ortiz, and the man in the suit, you haven't. Because what came next didn't just change the mission. It rewrote the rules for everyone involved. Thank you for watching. Follow me to receive the latest videos. Wish you always peace.